Hi, and welcome to another episode of Drafting Notes, the spin-off show from our main podcast, Page One, the Writers Podcast, where Tarek and I take one writing topic and try and find the solution. No, just talk about it basically for 20 minutes. Yeah, exactly. And one topic that I thought we could speak about today is, there's the famous old adage, don't judge a book by its cover. But of course, it's a complete lie, because everyone judges a book by its cover.
I mean, especially books.
And the importance of books, book covers, book presentation, and whether that's through trad publishing or self-publishing, and the difference that can make to a book and the success that a book can have as a result of the cover. Yeah. And I think, perhaps the easiest way in is to think about the distinction between trad and self-publishing, because obviously trad, you've got people that are going to design the covers for you, and they're employed to do that, so you get a bit of a professional feel for it. Whereas self-publishing, people can I think it's very varied, it's fair to say, the difference in good covers and bad covers. And one thing that I notice on self-publishing, on this podcast, on the main podcast, we've had self-published authors on. Hopefully the prejudice against self-publishing is diminishing, and I think self-publishing is a viable route in for authors. I don't think it's always the best idea. I think it only works I think it works better for certain genres than it does for others.
Yes.
But in terms of the covers themselves, they can be great and they can be pretty awful. And I think, for you, what makes a good cover? What makes a bad cover for you when you're looking at it?
That's a good question. I think first of all, you're right in that bad covers can be really off-putting, and if I see a bad cover, it will put me off wanting to read the book, and it will, in my head, fair or not, it will make me think that, especially if it's a self-pub book. Well, no, let me rephrase that. I think if it's a bad cover, my first thought would be, this is a self-pub book, which is a unfair point of view to have, I think, but that is what my gut feeling is. Because I think most of the time, most bad covers are in self-pub books. And I think that's because it's a really tricky thing to do. And with traditional published books, you've got marketing teams, you've got people whose job it is purely to make
professional designers.
Professionals, exactly, yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah, and they know what's doing well trending-wise, etc. They're playing to that. Whereas you're doing it yourself, it's a big responsibility, and a lot of people maybe don't want to or can't afford to pay a professional artist to do a bit of bespoke cover work for them, and so they do it themselves. And it can be something as simple as the font being wrong. I think simple things like that. You're right. I think it is often that
the font can look very, very bad on a lot of self-published books because it's not set properly,
justified properly, or something. Like the size of it's wrong.
It's the wrong type of font for the type of story that they're trying to tell. Yeah. But also, it just isn't set. It looks like you've just got MS Paint out and just typed it over the top of it, rather than it properly being set against the image on the cover and stuff like that. Now, it's not a surprise if you're not a professional designer, then designing a book cover is difficult. But I suppose the point of this all is to say that a book cover can make a difference to whether or not someone picks it up and decides, what, I'm interested in that. I'm going to look at the back cover, or I'm going to look at the first few pages and see if I'm.
Especially, I think for ebooks, if you're scrolling through a Kindle store or Kobo store or whatever, and you've got maybe a second or less for a cover to jump out at like 4 or 5 rows that you're going through, it really has to pop in that moment. And if it looks cheap, or if it just looks bland, if it doesn't do anything to stand out, then you've lost the reader already potentially at that point, I think.
And I think part of it is as well is that obviously traditional publishers have access to so many different fonts and
Oh
stuff
yeah,
like that as
yeah,
well. You know, that free fonts, there are a lot of them out there, but it's not always possible to get the right font for the right book, and the way that they'll typeset, they'll lay it out, and all of that sort of thing can make a big difference to, as you say, that first impression. That I'm just flicking through pages on
yeah,
Amazon or whatever,
yeah,
and suddenly that stands out. You don't want it standing out in a bad way.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's the thing. And then the other thing is obviously whatever cover image is chosen for that. Now, again, in trad publishing, you'll get a professional designer who has access or can create, a bespoke image for it. Whereas in self-publishing, you're really left with access to free images,
yeah,
or unless you're using one of the paid services that do exist. But again, you've got to make the right selection for your book, and it's got to be the right size,
yeah.
how
It has
much
to
you
fit the cover
put
properly,
exactly.
centered right, or etc.
All of these things are small little details that can make a big difference to how the impression that a book can make on you
Yeah,
as a potential reader. Um, and I think I think we have to touch on that thorny topic of AI, because I think what a lot of or certainly some self-published authors have started to do is think that AI might be the answer. And obviously, these AI art apps, or whatever you want to call them, some of them can create some compelling images. Now,
yeah.
stolen images, you would
But
probably
completely.
say, but I don't think that's the way to go either, because even if it makes an image that you think suits your book perfectly, you're using something that is not, the writing community as a whole, and I think the reading community as a whole, isn't particularly favourable towards AI at the moment.
Yeah,
Now, there's a
there's
whole
that
other
risk of
episode
alienating
about,
yourself, isn't there, a little bit?
yeah, there is, and there's a whole other episode about AI that we could do, and probably will do in the future, about why that is and why people feel so strongly about it. But I don't, I would encourage people not to use that,
Yeah,
because even trad publishers have got into trouble
yeah. You want to give your book
for
the
using
best
AI imagery
possible
on their
chance,
covers.
right? You don't
Yeah,
want to give it
exactly.
any reason. You don't want to give readers any reason not to read it, whether it's because the cover's bad or because it's used AI that they don't agree with, and that avoiding conflict, I think, is the key here. Just you want
Yeah,
them to connect.
you
to
want
it
that
organically.
compelling image, that compelling
Yeah,
typeface, something that is just going to draw the eye to the book and say, "Oh,
yeah,
that looks interesting," or "That
yeah,
looks," if it's a fantasy book, "Oh, that looks like a fantasy book that I want to read," or "That, what is that? I don't even understand that, but it looks cool.
yeah,
I'm interested in that."
yeah,
And I think, unless you're a designer, it can be difficult to do that. But I do want to put a shout out for a mutual friend of ours, that Jordan Acosta, who's got he's got a website. We'll put a link in the podcast description. But he recently, I think, did a couple of posts with links to free resources, and
yeah,
the amount of free image resources that you can get, that you can use for book covers or websites or whatever, is incredible. And it is the place to go if you can't afford to get that designer, if you can't afford to sorry, someone
skill. my my dog trying to break into the room. Then the door's too heavy for her, so she just gives up, goes away.
All right, I thought she'd learned how to use door handles. Which
No, no.
is
Clever girl.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, if you can't, I suppose what I'm saying is that if you can't afford to pay a designer or use one of the paid services that have sort of book covers that you can buy and then
Yeah,
edit yourself, there are resources out there to do it. So don't resort to using AI, because I think it's all about, as you say, first impressions. That's all it's
yeah,
about.
yeah,
And if people think it's AI, then it's going to turn off a huge number of people.
yeah. And you want as many folk as possible to be on your side. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And I think, also, we've talked a lot about self-publishing there in covers, but I think even for traditional publishing, the right cover can make a huge difference to maybe not the ultimate success of the book, but certainly whether, even booksellers are going to put it on the shelf facing out and stuff like that. If it's got a cool cover,
yeah,
then
yeah,
they're more likely to do that. They're more likely to put it on a table if it looks cool. If it's a boring cover, so although as an author with a traditional publisher, you probably shouldn't be saying to them, I've got this great idea for a cover, listen to me, and this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because they won't generally take very kindly to that. But, you know, they will, I think I'm right in saying, you know, you've been through it, but they will send you sometimes a few options for covers and things like that. So you do have some control, some input into the process even there.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of good points there. I think if you're a self-pub person, the way I would look at it is I would treat it as important, if not potentially more important than the actual manuscript itself, because, you know, when you've written your book, you've potentially given it, and you know, people always talk about how you should be sharing it with people to get feedback,
Yep.
readers, etc.
We've got another drafting notes on getting feedback.
Exactly, that's a good point. And I think you should be, if you're going to that length for your manuscript, you should be going to those same lengths for your cover. You should be sharing your cover with people and getting feedback on it. And you know, if you give it to 4 or 5 people, 6 people, 7, 10 people, I can give it more numbers.
What was your
12 people? Then, well, one, it's much easier to get feedback because it's a 2-second look at something.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on it? You know, and read anything. And 2, I think the more feedback you can get on the cover, the more honest feedback, people will tell you very quickly if it is something which they would buy or not buy.
And I think what could be useful in that exercise as well is if you just show them the cover and maybe with the title or whatever, but ask them what type of book they think it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think that can tell you a lot.
Have you captured what your book is actually about in an image? People, exactly. Yeah.
But you know, I mentioned the trad publishing side of things. I mean, how have you found?
Well, that I mean,
all that sort of stuff?
I mean, certainly. So, trad publishing, certainly, obviously, you've got less of an impact, less of a say on the cover than you would if you're doing it all yourself. But I've always felt like I'm involved in the kind of creation of the cover in the sense that I'm being shown the working. You know, here's what we're thinking, here's an idea, here's where we're at so far. And I've always been asked, kind of, what's your thoughts? And I don't know what would happen if I'd come back and said, oh my God, I hate it. You know, I don't like that at all. If I'd been really strongly against it. I always think that I know it's been done by a marketing team whose job it is and who should know the market, know how to sell something, etc. So I suppose I would always be, well, I don't like it, but if you can, if they're convinced or if they've got a compelling argument, this is going to be what that genre is about right now and stuff, I'd be like, well, I'd be maybe be more swayed by it. I know my first book, I was sent 5 or 6 potential covers and asked what my favourite one was, and the one I picked was the one that they liked already, so that was quite lucky. Oh, they said that anyway. So that's been the most kind of most options I've had to look at. Whereas recently, my last book was just very much like, here's where we're thinking we'll go with it, and you can see it getting built up into the final image, which I liked very much. So it was fine, but I don't know what I would do if I hated it. I know I've seen people talking online about hating it.
We know someone, one of our friends had a cover pitch.
That's right.
For the book, and the publishers
that was
were
an
like,
awful cover.
we love it, and honestly,
it was
we've
dreadful.
seen it. It looked like I made it on MS Paint. You know,
it looked like a very, very cheaply done, like 20 years ago type.
Yeah. It was not a good cover, and there that author pushed back, and I think with the help of their agent said this isn't going to work.
That's a good point. I think your agent is. I think if you're really unhappy with what the publisher has done for your book and you don't like the front cover at all, that is what your agent's for. You know, don't feel stressed about ever having to think, well, now I need to have the confidence to go back and say I don't like it. And I don't think you even have to go back and say what you want. I think you feeling your opinion back is enough. If you're not happy with something.
I think it can be a red flag for publishers if you're an author that's going, this is what I think the cover should be. And you're sending them designs and all this sort of stuff. Unless you're a professional designer, maybe.
Yeah.
But even then, you're kind of stepping on other people's toes, and you don't want to.
I've certainly been asked, again, with my first book, I was certainly asked for to send images that I thought was appropriate, kind of thing. So I was sending screen grabs of opening credits or album covers or book covers that had kind of weird kind of vibes that I quite liked, and how much of that ever goes anywhere I don't know, but it does make you feel involved, which is quite nice, I suppose. But Yeah, but the other thing I suppose is that a lot of covers, it's very subjective. Like, it's a very subjective thing. It's art. I've seen covers that I don't like, which other people love, and vice versa, I'm sure. So it's tricky, and it's personal because your personal work, but it's also, there's a professional element in terms of what the market is looking for, what other books in the same genre are selling, what they have on the front cover. Cozy crime, for instance, always comes to my mind in terms of
Yes.
similar types of covers. And you may not like that kind of cozy crime cover, but if you've written a cozy crime, almost certainly the marketing team will say, well, we want to make it look kind of similar to these other books. And so it's knowing how much, when to push back and what to push back on. It can be hard.
I think that's right, and you have to kind of trust in their skills, as you say. But if it's wrong, if you just feel ultimately it's wrong,
if it feels wrong,
you should say something.
For sure, yeah.
But the point, I suppose, is to sort of wrap it all up, is that your book cover can make a difference in terms of that first impression, which, in a very crowded publishing market, whether it's trad or self-publishing, can be the difference between someone picking your book up and looking at it or not. So do give it a bit of thought. Don't think it's, you could have written the greatest book in the world, but if you have a terrible, terrible cover for it, then it's going to be, you're giving yourself a harder challenge to get people to read that brilliant book.
Yeah, you want your best foot forward. And I would say not even the cover, like not just the cover. I think extend that to the look of the book as a whole. Like, if someone likes the cover enough to pick it up or to click on it and to look at the first page, you want that page to be properly justified, to be properly, the margins to be the right size, to the layout of it look right, the spacing, all that kind of stuff has to be, the font, everything has to look right, and you want the paper, the color of the paper. That's something which I always find on primarily, again, self-pub books which have been printed. The paper is like really white. Paperback books that are put out by traditional places, it's almost a kind of yellowish tint to it. It's a kind of creamy color, and for whatever reason, that feels professional, whereas a kind of bright white printer paper, or it looks like printer paper. Maybe that's what it is. It makes me think it's been printed off, and it's cheap.
I think again, with self-publishing, you can have options about what paper you want them to use and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. And obviously, different options cost more money, and it's difficult.
I know. It all comes down to money, doesn't it?
You're having to balance these things out. But I think it goes back to what you were saying, which is put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
Make that cover eye-catching, make it fit your type of story you're trying to tell, and make sure, and if you are self-publishing, get a copy of it yourself before you put it out there, and make sure it looks and it feels like the book that you want it to be, because you're going to get one chance at making an impression with people, so you may as well make sure it's the best that you can make it.
You spend so long writing the thing, don't hobble it on the way out the door.
Exactly. So there's many things you could do with your book cover to present your book in the best way, but I think the key thing maybe is to think about it. Don't just treat it as an afterthought. Think that I've written the book, all of this is superfluous. It isn't. People will care about it. So
it's as important, for sure.
Yeah, so definitely take time over it. And if you haven't seen a good book cover, check out The Midnight King by Tarak Ashkenani.
That is the best book cover you'll ever see, in my opinion, of course. The book itself is shit, but
it is. I know the book isn't much to write home about, but it's a very it catches your eye as a book cover.
I was very pleased with that.
So, and also actually what catches it is the little, what do they call it? I don't know. There's a professional term for it, but the little sub.
Oh, the kind of. I know what you mean. The kind of.
Yeah,
I don't know what that phrase
is. Very
is.
well done as well on that one as well. So there are many things that can draw you in. I would say. Oh, sorry. I'm going to add one more postscript. I was about to wrap the episode up, which is blurbs. And again, we could do a whole episode on blurbs. Yeah. But there's, I would say, again, this is maybe more focusing on the self-publishing thing. But I would say a blurb that says something like, a really exciting book, an Amazon reader or something like that is not, don't put that on your cover. It's not worth it. It's not going to sell the book to anyone, that sort of thing. Now, obviously, if Stephen King is giving you a quote in your book, different thing. Put that on the front cover. And obviously there are publishers, big publishers now, saying that questioning the value of blurbs and all that sort of stuff as well. Anyway,
that's a whole other topic, I think, isn't it? Really.
But I think if you put a quote from someone that no one knows, that almost, to me, that almost it makes me think, cheapens the value of the book in some way.
Yeah.
Which maybe it shouldn't. Maybe that's me being snobby.
No,
but,
I know what you mean. I think like a blurb can be an effective blurb that is a great line about the book or the author on the cover by a recognised author themselves is great. I think that I have similar thoughts. If I see a cover with a quote with someone, I'm like, I don't know who that is, or it's like a reader, a NetGalley reader, someone. I'm always kind of like, well, how reliable is that, or what kind of weight does that have compared?
Exactly, you have no touchstone to that.
Yeah,
person
I think that's it. I think that's right.
So why should I care what that person thinks about it? If there's no touchstone between you as the potential buyer or reader, to the person making the quote, then the quote is worthless ultimately. And I suppose that's the same for any type of review, film reviews and all that sort of thing as well. But that's just one addendum, I suppose, I would add to the question of book covers as well. But I don't know. What do you think? Are we completely wrong about everything we've said? Probably. No. High chance. But let us know in the comments below the video, or drop us an email at podcast@rightgear.co.uk, or you can get us on most social media at UK Page One. But we will be back soon with another episode of Drafting Notes, and we will, of course, be back with another great guest on the main podcast, Page One, the Writers Podcast. We'll speak to you soon.
See you later.